everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be dealing with some orchids that I've been putting off for a little while. These are the Oncidium Twinkles. As you can see, they are very much overgrowing their pots, and to the point that I'm struggling even to water this one because there's no actual room for me to get my pump sprayer down into the media between all the pseudobulbs. The other two aren't quite so bad, but I am neglecting them quite a lot, forgetting to water them in this sort of setup, and they do need a repot. So I'm going to repot them all. I unfortunately came to do this repot and then realised I actually don't have any bigger pots that would be suitable for them, because all the bigger pots I have are very deep and they just don't need it. They're very small plants. They just bush out hugely. So I have repurposed some roses tins just after Christmas. So we've got plenty of old chocolate tins lying around. So I'm going to use these, and they're nice and shallow. I've drilled where the semi-hydro reservoir will be, and I am going to be putting these into inorganic today. One of them I'm going to put more Synthic in the mix and pumice and leca, and the other one I'm going to put more Seramis in the mix, and we'll kind of see which is the better mix. I do only have 2 of these pots, so these 2 here are probably going to go into community pots. At some point I'm going to need to divide them, but for now they don't have any useless back bulbs. They're all leafed and useful, and potentially could in the future produce more growths and more flowers. We do still have some flowers on this twinkle. It's been in bloom for months, so I just need to repot it at this point. So we're going to get on with the repot. I've bought a new bowl to do my repots in because I've used all my other washing up bowls for various media, leca, pumice soaking. So we've got a bowl here, which I did almost actually consider using as a giant community bowl. Things haven't got quite to that stage yet, but at some point we might need something like this. But for now, I've repurposed some chocolate tins, and that'll take up a bit less room on my shelf than something like a washing up bowl. With that said, I'm just going to take them out. And last time I did this, I divided them up when I first got them, because there were loads of rotting back bulbs, and I put them into the wrong. Like, we've got a few mixed in which flower differently, where I've mixed up divisions. I'm going to try not to do that, but for the 2 in the community pot that doesn't matter too much. So these are all in sphagnum moss in self-watering. They've been in this sort of setup for over a year now. They need a repot, and they've done extremely well. They were quite small divisions when I got them because we had a lot of rot. They were just discounted. I think I got them for about £3 each, something like that, from a garden centre. Okay, that was a bit unceremonious. It's not the easiest to hold because we don't have any big pseudobulbs to actually hold on to with these. I hope the camera angle is okay for this. I'm just gonna remove the moss. You can see we've got a nice root system there, which we didn't have when they went in, so that's good. Actually seems that a lot of them were growing beneath the moss. They were kind of growing downwards, it seems. Got some good size progression on the latest bulbs though compared to the old bulbs. I think they were growing downwards because they'd reached the edge of the pot and were like being pushed down maybe. It's very weird. I'm probably going to fast forward through me removing all the media so you guys don't have to sit and watch this. So I'm nearly there on removing the moss. Still got a bit of work to do, but one thing that's really going to be difficult and going to annoy me hugely is where I put a top dressing of bark on the twinkles to stop like algae forming on top of the moss, and where they've all grown like so tightly together and where the bulbs have like pushed up. They've pushed up and there's like bark all in between all of these bulbs, which is going to be a real pain to get out. So just bear that in mind when you're putting bark top layers, that when the plants grow like this, you will eventually have to pick all that bark out. So I'm going to get on and do that. So I think we're at the stage where a good rinse at the sink would be beneficial in helping me to get some of these last bits of sphagnum out of the root ball, which is pretty solid, and I've managed to get a lot of the bark out from in between the pseudo bulbs there. I'm going to go rinse it off, and we'll see if we can get any more organic media out of the middle of this, because it's going to drive me mad. So Yeah, it's done really well, and you can see relative to the size of the plant, the root system is not that deep. So really they don't need a massively deep container, even though they've had one. Actual depth wise, they probably only actually ventured down halfway into the container. Most of the roots are kind of around and going around the pot. So they don't need like a massively deep container. So I think the shallower pot will probably be absolutely fine for them. Okay, so I've managed to get most of the, if not all of the sphagnum moss out of the root ball. There's still a few bits left that it's going to annoy me a little bit, but at the end of the day I've started getting to the stage where I'm now accidentally pulling roots off, so I'd rather leave it at that. We've got a pretty clean root ball there. There might still be bits of sphagnum kind of right in the middle, but it's not the end of the world. It'll decompose and eventually just sort of flush out of the holes as they flush. I think we've got most of the organic matter out of the middle of the plant. It's getting to the stage where we've got a lot of new growths like right towards the centre of the plant here. And some like in there. So that is a little bit annoying. I don't know if I want to divide this plant again though, because every time you divide it you seem to create more and more leads from which they sprout new growths, and that's kind of good, but also I don't want like an entire twinkle forest. There is one kind of division point here where I think that must have been a division that got removed when I first got it, but the roots have completely intertwined now, so actually getting that division out is going to be a bit of a hassle. Just going to clean up the plant and take off some of the old sheaths while we've got it out of the pot. Just helps to keep organic matter from rotting too much in the middle of the plant, which can cause issues. A lot of flowers as well, where they drop all their flowers. Loads of like bits of flower in the middle of the plant. Obviously where they clump so tightly you get like less airflow in the middle of the plant, so that can lead to rot issues. I'm just going to try and remove as much dead matter as I can from the middle of the plant. I think that's fairly clean in there. And now we're going to move on to the repot. So what I'm going to do is pop a layer of lacquer at the bottom of this pot up to the reservoir holes that I've drilled. I'm just going to move my twinkle out for a second. Okay, so layer of plain lacquer at the bottom. This is just for the reservoir, so it really doesn't matter what's in it or how moisture retentive it is. And then what we're going to do is pop layers of Seramis. Probably put all of that in. Pumice. And lacquer. And now we're going to pop our twinkle in there. I'm just going to try and spread the roots out a little bit rather than just folding them on each other. Okay, so that's nicely in the middle of the pot. And now I'm just going to fill around with more Seramis, pumice and lacquer. Fun fact, I think Seramis was originally used for a recyclable form of cat litter. Okay, so I've got a very Seramis heavy mix. Twinkles are notorious for not really liking semi-hydro that much. A lot of people struggle with them. I don't think I ever even tried them. I think I just put them straight into moss with self-watering. That is my new little twinkle setup, and I'm just going to top it off with the non-wicking pebble top layer that I use, which is horticultural grit. And that is my twinkle all repotted. And we're going to move on to the next two now. And I think I'm going to be super lazy and reuse the same bowl. Sorry, it's still got the old sphagnum moss in. I'll be careful not to touch the new twinkles to the old media of this one. So 2 more twinkles to go, and these two are going to be potted up together into a community pot. They've got flower spikes at the moment, but I think that they're all done. I don't know. They're still green, but I'm pretty sure they're old flower spikes that have already bloomed. And this pot was kind of DIY self-watering pot where I improvised a base using an old saucer, and they do work, but also not the biggest pots, so they didn't have that much room for the orchids. These were some ones that I went back for later. I got the original one discounted and then I went back again, and these ones were still sat on the discount table. So they were in a slightly worse state because they got left in the shop quite a bit longer. And I keep forgetting to water them. And these are ones I divided because of rot. So they're just coming apart quite easily. So I'm just going to make a community twinkle pot with these ones. And they are slightly different colour forms, but not different enough that I care really. And it'll be a case of when I do divisions and giveaways, people will kind of have to bear in mind that they might get yellow or they might get beige. Hopefully that doesn't matter too much, but if it does, then I'll try and make sure that I keep note of which, maybe do it when they're flowering or something, so I know which ones I'm actually giving away. Healthy little root system on these guys. They have the finest roots, which I think is why in some environments they don't do very well in semi-hydro, because semi-hydro with lacquer has a lot of air pockets and quite large chunky media, and fine rooted orchids tend to do better with finer media, which is why I've used Seramis for the other one. But for these ones, what I'm going to do, and this is actually an easier job because they're in divisions rather than just a mass of bulbs, is I'm going to pop these into a mix of lacquer, pumice and Synthic, because Synthic is supposed to kind of imitate sphagnum moss very well, and I've got my other Oncidiums in mixes that have Synthic running through them and they seem to be doing very well, so it does seem to do well in that regard. And I have wiped down this table with rubbing alcohol in between pottings, so I'm just going to balance these on the table while I do this. Trying to decide if this is a new flower spike or one that's already flowered. I think it's a older one. It's just not gone brown yet. Lots of new growth starting on this one. And that dark at the base is bark, not rot. And there's actually another new growth coming through there as well. So these, when I got them, they were potted in coconut husk, pretty standard for orchids. So when you buy orchids in the UK, they tend to be potted in that cocoa husk, cocoa peat stuff. Oh, I've even got a bit of lacquer in here that I must have chucked in with the moss, which is firmly attached to a root, so that can stay on. And again, as I go, I'm just going to try and pull these old kind of leaves off and not pull the new growth off. So Twinkles, for me, they get this kind of spotting, which then results in leaf tip dieback. And I have treated these in the past with antifungals twice a year, systemic antifungals, which tuberconazole was the systemic that I used. And it didn't seem to make any difference, so I stopped doing it this autumn. I did it in spring. I used to do the twice yearly treatments, one in spring as the growing season was starting, and one in autumn. And it just didn't seem to do anything to help me with the spotting, so I've stopped. I think it's like a combination of factors that results in this spotting. Is that one done? And now I'm gonna literally at the same time unpot the other one, because I'm gonna community pot them anyway, so I don't really care about getting them mixed up at this stage. And these pseudobulbs are so buried in the moss. Don't know what I was doing, but it doesn't seem to have hurt them. So all of the roots from that are coming from the newer growths there. Accidentally just divided those. We are gonna have so much twinkle growth in this new pot. Definitely gonna have to do a giveaway for some twinkles, so watch this space. But first, we're gonna try them out in a Synthic mix and see how they do in that. So this very small division does have good roots, so it'll definitely establish. This always happens when I repot twinkles. The rhizomes tend to kind of climb all over each other. Isn't that the cutest, roundest little bulb you've ever seen? I think it's just adorable. While we're here, just going to take these old flower spikes off as well. Okay, so I'm just going to wash all my divided bits off under the tap, get rid of all this rubbish, and I will be right back. Okay, so my tub of twinkles has been washed off extremely vigorously under the tap, and this is what we have from those two pots. So these guys require a little bit of maintenance, and I think this is partially because I have been letting these dry out a little bit. So I'm going to be removing all of the leaf tips that have kind of died back. Just the obvious ones where I can see spotting on, like this is kind of the start of dieback. Just the ones where it's really obvious on. Kind of as I go along, I'll just remove things like this. It can come off. And some of these are actually forming buds, so we've still got some flowers to come, it looks like. For example, on this one, that's got quite a lot of buds on. And we're going to be popping these into a mix of leca, pumice and Synthic. So I'm going to again fill the bottom with leca. So I've just filled the bottom up with leca there, and now I'm going to pop a layer of Synthic. I'm not going to use too much because I don't want it to be massively soggy. I just want it to help like increase the wicking efficiency in there. So I'm going to try as well pulling some up as I put the media on to increase that. So now I'm going to add more leca and pumice, and then I'm just going to like try and pull the bits of Synthic up a bit so they'll be kind of touching the reservoir. Okay, I'm going to add more leca and pumice. Okay, and more Synthic there, and then I'm going to position the orchid directly on top of that. Well, the orchids, the many. For now, I'm just popping them in. To kind of work out positioning of the clumps, but obviously once I fill around, because they do have their own little root systems, each of them, we will be able to kind of assess a little bit better how they're going to sit. I'm trying to leave a little gap in between each of the clumps to allow it to grow outwards. And I think we've just about got enough room in this. Gonna need a repot probably relatively soon, but by that point I'll probably be in a position to just divide them and say who wants some twinkles, because I can't keep endlessly adding more to the mix. I'm just going to fill around with more leca and pumice just to create kind of a top layer, and then I'm going to put a dressing of the horticultural grit on the top. I didn't quite have enough leca and pumice, so I am just going to put a bit more Synthic in there as well. Okay, so that is kind of what the mix looks like before I add some horticultural grit to the top there. Okay, so those are my 2 new twinkle tubs all potted up, and we will see how they do at the next repot and monitor their growth. Obviously I can't show you the root growth in these sort of pots, but I think we can probably tell quite easily from how they're growing, how well they're doing, and obviously they'll probably need a repot relatively soon, at which point I'll be able to tell you a bit more about whether the Seramis mix is doing any better than the Synthic mix, etc. Thanks so much for watching today, and if you have any questions then leave a comment down below and I will do my best to answer. And if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to give it a like or subscribe to my channel for more regular orchid updates, and I will see you guys later. Bye!